Hi, I'm Alec, business coach and wannabe fantasy author starting from square one, $0. In this video, I am going to do the math to show you how you can make a full-time living from your writing. It's simple, it does not require an extensive back catalog. You can do it starting now as a new author. In fact, it's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna break down how I'm going to get from zero to a full-time income and what my goals for 2024 are. I'm also going to show you how broken the traditional business model is for like print, working with a publisher, etc. How the self-published business model is not much better. And you'll be able to see why this new indie business model is so much simpler, consistent, and flexible than the traditional author business model in which hardly anyone makes a living. Everyone knows that making a living as a writer is about as likely as winning the lottery, but everyone is wrong. So let's dive into the numbers and see why the traditional or even a self-published model is not going to get you the income you want, or at least not without a crazy amount of marketing skill on your part, and why this new indie method might be quicker and more reliable as a source of income if you're willing to be flexible on how you write and the medium of your writing. So the traditional method, we're going to talk about price per unit, i.e. how much a book costs, your income per unit, how much you actually make per book, and then we're going to assume that you have a goal of making $100,000 per year. This definitely puts you in the top income bracket or the top end of the income spectrum for authors. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each business model. So for a traditional business model, right, you might be selling a $15 print book, and then you might make, let's subtract around -4 for just like costs of producing the book. All right, and that gives you about $11. And on that $11, let's say you're making around a 10% royalty rate. Now, royalty rates are usually like 5 to 15%, maybe 20 or 25% for like the biggest names who are deliver reliably for publishing companies. And so, in those cases, they get higher royalties, but let's assume something more reasonable for a young to medium author, a royalty rate of 10%. That means it's actually pretty likely to just make $1.10 per book, which is not very much. This means if you're only making $1.10 per book and you want to make a total of $100,000 in the course of a year, that you would have to get 90,910 sales to crack 6 figures. That's finding a lot of people. We'll get into that a little bit more in the cons section. So with this business model, there are a lot of pros, which is why people are attracted to it. One of the pros for the traditional model is the advance, the fact that you can get some money in advance from the company. You will have to pay that back later in sales before you get your royalties for books. So, and also for new authors, that's like 5 to 10,000 spread out over several quarters. So advance is not likely to be a ton of money, but it is nice to get a little bit of money up front. The other pro, or a big one, is just help with the production of the book generally. A lot of authors thank their editors, so it's helpful to have a critical outside eye, but who also wants your work to succeed. That doesn't mean there aren't authors who ever feel like they made a bad decision following an editor, but generally I see them thanking their editors. So plus it's not just editors, but like help with the cover and blurbs, etc. So there's a lot of production assistance, and probably the final bound book is going to look nicer because you had professionals who focus on things like cover art working on it, rather than doing it all yourself, or even finding contractors yourself and paying them. So, and then a third pro of traditional publishing is really help marketing during launch. Now, most books don't get a lot of additional marketing after launch, and I say help with the launch because a lot of publishers will only put in as much effort as you're willing to put in. So if you're not willing to like really be out there signing books, going to conventions or what have you, and meeting people in person and pushing your book, then they're probably not going to sell it a lot either. Now, I have also heard from other authors who do put a lot of effort into marketing their books because they're excited about it, that sometimes their book doesn't get a lot of publishing love or marketing love for their publisher, even at launch, which is frustrating. So again, I think these are all benefits. Actually, probably the biggest one really is the help with the production side of things, because if you're a new author, the advance is going to be small. There's not going to be as much support at launch, etc. But those are tangible benefits if what you're trying to do is maximize your novel writing time instead of maximizing your income. This business model makes a lot of sense. So what are the cons? The cons are basically that you have to find a lot of people to buy your book. Make little money per book. And so that means you have to find a lot of people. And that means that you're going to have some crazy launch pushes, and that marketing is pretty much solely on you after the launch anyway. And so you have to find a lot of people to buy your book, right? And it doesn't mean you have to find 90,000 people, because some people will buy more books, especially if you write in series. That does tend to be more economically successful, because then someone will buy the whole series rather than just one book. But it's still a lot of people to find. And I think the combination of these factors leads to kind of what I'm going to call the book treadmill, which is, since most authors really aren't good at marketing, and most marketing companies or most publishing companies really aren't going to market the book much after launch unless it's one of their biggest sellers, then what you're going to have to do is release new books regularly, like every year, do the whole book touring thing, etc., because that is how authors in a traditional space market. You really can't put up ads on a book where you're only making $1.10 off it. It just doesn't really make sense. You're probably going to spend more on ads than you're going to get from each book, which means that you don't have the power to market your book as much. You also might not have the rights. You might be restricted in what kind of promotions that you can do, depending on, for instance, if you're publishing company, they want to make money, so they don't want you offering your book for free, and so you might not be able to offer your book for free in promotions, for instance, the first book in a series, to like hook people and get more people later on in the series, or you might require their permission or who knows what. So there's a bunch of other things that kind of limit your ability to market, and so what ends up happening is you just need to put out a book every year. And so you are tied to doing this, and in my video on author case studies, it's one of the things I noticed, where there's a traditionally published author who hit some good numbers at the peak of his career, around like 75,000 per year, but as soon as he stops publishing as frequently, there's a huge drop off in his income. So there's this like book treadmill that you're tied to. So one of the things I was going through is this is the economics of print books in a traditional setting. You can get slightly better economics off of ebooks. So for example, ebooks, you might have a 15 to 20% royalty rate. So on $11, that looks like as much as $2.20. That halves the amount of people you would have to have buy your book if you're getting twice as much from it. So, instead of 90,000, that's around 45,000. That's still a ton of books that you need to sell to meet your income goal. So let's dive into the self-publishing business model. So as opposed to the traditional print, I'm going to compare this to one of the most common sources of income, the ebook from Amazon. Now, Amazon will give you up to 70% royalties, but only up to $9.99 for an ebook. After that, they give you 35%, meaning you actually make more money on a $9.99 book than you do on a $15 book, which is kind of crazy, but that's what it is. Now, there's almost no cost of production, meaning that you get your 70% royalties right there, and that 70% of royalties comes to around 630. So you're making almost 6 times as much as a self-published author. Now, how many people do you need to find in order to get $100,000 worth of income, not just sales, but income from your books? You need to find around 15,874 people to buy your book, or you need to sell 15,000 books a year. So what are the pros of this self-published model? Well, obviously you're making more money per book, which means fewer sales and less marketing that you have to do. So let's really dive into like what this means for sales. Like, say your publishing company helps you get 1/3 of your sales for your goal, right? That's either 30,000 in-print books in a traditional sense, or 15,000 ebooks in, again, the traditional method. You'd still have to make up that difference. So in a traditional, you'd still have to sell 60,000 print books or 30,000 more ebooks, versus self-published focused on ebooks, you would only have to sell 15,000. So even if it looks very attractive to get a publisher to help you sell your book, the fact that you need so many more sales to hit your income target means that actually it might be harder for you to sell. And actually, since self-published work tends to be cheaper, not only do you need fewer sales, but they might be easier to get because it's less expensive. So you might end up doing less marketing in the long run. So what are the cons of self-publishing? You do all the marketing, right? So that means you have to come up with the cover and the blurb and figure out how to sell things. It's a completely different skill set than writing a novel. It's a lot to learn and it's a lot to do, so it is more work. On the other hand, there are advantages to doing all the marketing. For example, if you do have a back catalog, then you're not necessarily on the book treadmill like you would be with the traditional. You can just step up your marketing for your existing books, and as long as you continue to sell 15,000 per year, 15,874 per year, you can still hit your income target without releasing new material. Now, it's probably wise to regularly release novels, because the more novels you write, the more your fans can buy from you, and the easier it's going to be to make those sales each year. So don't stop writing novels. But it gives you more control over your income, and so it'll be less variable. It's less dependent on the book treadmill. And so you have to do all the marketing, and while you have to have 3 to 6 times fewer sales, you still need to get 15,000 sales. So that's still a lot of sales. Oh, and one more issue with the self-published model: you pay for editing, cover, etc. So as opposed to the traditional model, where it's true you're not going to be making a ton of money, maybe 5 to 10,000 in your advance, you are making that money up front, and the publishing company is putting together covers, etc. They have, they pay professionals to do it, so you're not out of pocket for that. Whereas with the self-published, depending on how fancy you want to go for a cover, a lot of, really professional book covers go for $5,000, so you might be out of pocket $5,000 plus editing and whatnot. So you might be out of pocket $5,000 to $10,000. You can do it much cheaper. You can do things yourself. You can not have an editor. You have that will impact the quality of your book, but whatever help you do choose to get, you're paying for. So instead of having money up front, you're actually out of pocket up front for your books, and you have to make all your own costs back. So while I am a business coach, focused on product, and usually technical products like building web apps. I'm really good at helping companies with their engineering teams and adopting MVP frameworks, light frameworks for building products as quickly and as low cost as possible, right? I am not an expert marketer, and so I'm looking at this and thinking, I need to get 90,000 sales even if I could get a publisher, like, right, even if I could get my script accepted by an agent, and then an agent actually successfully pitches it to a publisher and I get it picked up for like a $5,000 advance, I have to make 90,000 sales, and they might help me with some of that, but like a good chunk of that I'm going to have to do, and I'm going to have to do that all over again the next year. That's intimidating. Even the self-published model looks a little bit more straightforward. I don't like, I can get an editor, I can pay for an editor, I pay for artists, so I can get some of the benefits of the traditional. I don't have to like draw the cover myself. I don't have to just copy edit it myself. But like, even so, I have to make 15,000 sales, and that's still a lot of sales. So this last business model is the one that I am going to use. It's the one that I think most reliably will serve independent authors if they can get good at it. I'm calling it the new indie, and it comes from the research that I've done. I have a video on a survey of 2,000 independent authors, how they actually make money. And I've also done some case studies, another video, you can check it out here, of what it actually looks like in practice making money as an author. You can check those videos out now. I will also link them at the end of this video, so check these out. They will add a lot of context and information about the different ways that indie authors can make money, and some of the more lucrative ones, including the business model that I am going to show you right now. So this new indie method is me taking a look at all the ways indie authors make money. What are the ways they make the most money, more money than book sales, and which is the best business model, the most secure, that will get you to income as quickly as possible, like getting money in your pocket as quickly as possible, even without a large back catalog of books, and what will be more reliable income. And this is the way that I will choose to make money in 2024. It is subscription platforms. Now, this doesn't exclude the ability to write novels. Go ahead and write novels. It's good to have extra stuff to sell to your subscription platform. But this does fundamentally change what you're writing. You are trying to figure out how to write free content that ropes people in, not just ads, but storytelling, right? Storytelling through social media, writing teasers and whatnot, and then putting a portion of your writing behind a paywall on a subscription platform. So you're doing free and paid writing. This is much more akin to, say, a 19th century style of like writing books as serialized books to attract people, to attract subscribers to someone else's publication. But just in this case, it's more direct, right? You're attracting people to your publication. So it's a very different style of writing, and we'll get into that in the pros and the cons. So, but I looked up Patreon, and their average subscription, they said, was $7. All right. And then the unit economics are flippin' amazing. The unit income economics are flippin' amazing. Patreon only takes 5%. So you know that royalty rate Amazon gives you only if you are selling a book for under $10 at 70%. Like 70% royalty sounds great. Really what Amazon is doing is charging you 30% for just using their servers. It's not like you have any human at Amazon helping you or doing anything for your book. That's actually kind of a steep charge, and it makes me hate Amazon a little bit. And I can understand why they're so successful. Patreon only takes 5%, and so $7 less 5% is $6.65. So even though this is the cheapest per unit option, it's also the highest income per unit option. But wait, there's more. The fun thing about this subscription is that it renews. And so if someone stays the entire year, that means that you don't just get the one-time $6.65, but you can get $79.80 per year for a subscriber who stays the whole year. Notice how the money here is blowing everything else out of the water. If you want to run ads and you're only making $1.10 per book, you're gonna lose money. You can make money as a self-published author running ads if you're making $6.30 and your ads are really targeted, etc. But if what you're doing is trying to acquire a year-long subscriber and that gives you $80 a year rather than $6 for someone who buys your book for the year, wow, that's a huge difference. You can run a lot more ads. You can do a lot more marketing-wise. And so, of course, that means you have to learn marketing skills. But if you have marketing skills, this is so much more lucrative. So how many yearly subscribers do you need to make $100,000 per year? Well, my friend, only 1,284, right? Notice how that's less than 1/10 of the sales you would need for a self-published book. Now, again, this is not apples to apples. You have to not only attract someone, but maintain their attention for the whole year. But it is so much easier to keep someone's attention than to get it the first time. So I would definitely go with this, getting $80 for being able to keep someone's attention, but I only have to get 1,200 people versus having to acquire 15,000 new customers each year. Oh, so much easier. But wait, it gets better, right? People might stay over from year to year. So if, I think Patreon mentioned that the average of only 60% of your subscribers stay beyond 6 months or 3 months on average. So we'll just say you get half of your subscribers stay year to year. And who knows, that may be optimistic, but we're just fudging the numbers. That's still 642 people that you have to find after the first year. So if you want to hit 100,000 going from 0 to 60, right? Going from 0 to full-time $100,000 income, you would have to find 1,200 people that year. But if you can keep half of those people, you only need to find 600 people the next year. That's a little over 10 a week. Now, if you're an author, probably you're an introvert, and this is not the type of thing that you would ever want to do, but theoretically, if you just DM'd 100 people a day to invite them to your platform, you could probably get the, 12 people per week that you need, 12 or 13 people per week that you would need to maintain 100,000 subscriptions, assuming that half the people drop it every year or whatnot. So big asterisks, again, these are rough numbers. If you really wanted to dive into the business of this, you would be thinking in terms of monthly churn, because most of your subscriptions will probably be monthly, but this gets the idea across. You have to find orders of magnitude fewer people, almost 100 times fewer people to join your subscription platform than to buy a print book in the traditional method. So this is, in the end, I think a lot less marketing. So what are the pros of this new indie method, i.e. relying on free and paid content online where you're telling your stories rather than the traditional novel format? Well, one of the major ones is you need fewer sales to hit your income target. And so that means less time marketing and more time writing, actually, potentially, right? What else? It's consistent. So you are mostly trying to keep the attention of people who've already bought into you, which is much easier than trying to sell a book to a new audience, or you've captured someone's attention once with a book a couple years ago and then trying to recapture their attention. It is much easier if you can produce quality content each month to hold someone's attention than to recapture it. So that is powerful. Another big benefit, particularly for new authors, is you don't need a big back catalog. So with your premium subscription, you do need some content, but that content could be a chapter or two free with some teaser materials or excerpts, or that you're putting on social media to draw people in, and then a few chapters gated behind the paid content, plus behind the scenes or voting on what happens depending on how collaboratively you like to create. It depends. There's a lot of other options, and I think that's the flexibility of the content you produce here is an advantage and disadvantage. So I'm gonna say flexible content. So, on the one hand, this means that not everything you put up has to be written, so that you can do behind the scenes stuff. You can ask, polls and community things. You can foster community. Fostering community itself can be really valuable. I find that in free Facebook groups and Reddit and things like that, there can be a lot of noise from people who aren't heavily engaged, but you get a very different kind of engagement and community from a paid group. Or you can if it's well curated. So if you're community minded, there's a lot of value add there. And so this is really great for people who are not solely introverts who just want to write novels. Like this might be the nightmare for that type of person, but for someone who wants to foster community a little bit more, who wants to think in terms of multimedia possibilities, not just writing, who's thinking about storytelling not just as novel writing, this can be awesome. So I'm going to list this as a con, is that it's highly experimental. This is a less known, less used medium. There are people already doing it successfully, so there's plenty of good examples if you want to see this working. It's not like you have to figure out entirely yourself, but there's going to be more experimentation, a steeper learning curve than just the novel, which has been around for hundreds of years. You know it, you love it. And so that type of thing, this might be hard for introverts. There are plenty of introverts who are really successful on social media or learn how to be successful on social media, in part because there is a difference between talking to the camera and talking to large groups of real people. And so I don't think this is like, if you're an introvert, you can't do this, but I recognize a lot of introverts are probably in the traditional camp where I want to hide in my little hidey hole and write novels most of the year and only come out when I absolutely have to for a book launch and signings and whatnot. If so, like, this is going to be hard because there's going to be lots of people who want a parasocial relationship with you, want some access to you. But if you're a chatty person who likes showing people behind the scenes, that's a pro. And I think kind of related to some of this, but I'll put it separately, is that it requires you to be chronically online. And so probably as a self-published author, because you're doing all your own marketing, and even as a traditional author, you're going to be online, you're going to be marketing. This subscription platform is just going to be more so because you're going to have to do all the marketing to get you those sales, but you're going to want people who are paying for premium access to you. So you have to be more available to those people online. So I think this would be the more intense one that fosters and creates a more chronically online lifestyle. I am someone who, in my experience with social media, actually, I don't run into a lot of rude people for the most part. I do occasionally. I do run into angry people, but like overwhelmingly, actually, what I see online is a lot of support with the people that I follow and most of my conversations, etc. Interesting conversations. So like, I don't think that being online has to be toxic. But it can be in certain areas, or like if you want to put your political opinions out there or follow other people who do, that gets really messy. And then, if you have difficulty unplugging, right, that like you tend to doom scroll, the online requirements of this lifestyle will exacerbate that. So I think that's something to think about, right? It's a different lifestyle. And then you need to put out constant content is another downside. But you notice this is just really a different version of the book treadmill. And so like if you're self-published and have figured out a way, you like have a sizable back catalog that you can market and you're good at marketing, you might, like, I don't know people who do this. Like most people who get into this game do it because they like writing, so they won't want to stop writing. But like theoretically, you could stop telling stories and just market your old stories if you're self-published. That doesn't really work in traditional. There's the book treadmill, and obviously here you've got to keep producing original content, telling stories, etc. It's just more granular than the book treadmill, right? Like you need to do it monthly rather than putting out a book yearly. So I think this downside is not that different than traditional, and in practice it's not going to be that different than self-published, because again, if you're a self-published author, you're probably doing it because you love writing and you're going to keep writing anyway. But what I think is the unique downside of the new indie is just the format, right? It's more often in smaller chunks. For some people, that might be better. For a lot of people, often I think working more frequently in smaller chunks is actually healthier, right? Rather than the stereotype, the movie stereotype of that author who has their advance but they haven't been able to write anything and now they're on the hook for a whole novel in a month or two, right? They've been procrastinating. Whereas like you don't have to produce a novel, but you do have to produce monthly, actually is probably healthier for a lot of people, but it's different. And so for some people, might be a con. So I've really dived into the weeds of these business models, but I want to make it real to you because if you're thinking about making a living in abstract terms, you're really not going to know how to do it. But this is pretty straightforward. You have to look at other people who have a successful subscription model, take a look at the types of content that they're writing, probably something like serial content, and then produce that yourself. And you only have to get 1,200 people to sign up initially, and then if you can keep 50% of those, you only have to find 600 new people a year. Again, that's much less marketing. It is, however, more interaction with your community, and that can be more time for storytelling depending on how you use it. That can be more types of other content, which could either be annoying or great for you depending on your level of extroversion. Do you like doing behind the scenes, doing community events, or is that a pain, etc.? And I think you can do it either way. I think you could run a Patreon, and I'll research this. You could run a Patreon or Substack that really is fiction work focused and isn't very community focused. And if you're more extroverted, you could lean into that as one of your strengths and create more of a sense of community. I think one of the advantages of being good at community, as well as, of course, the storytelling and the content that people originally came for, is you probably will have a lower churn rate. I hope it is obvious now why I, as a new author starting from scratch, would go the subscriptions route. There's still a lot of research that I need to do in terms of who's successful and what types of content are they producing and how do they find people to sub. Like there's a lot of that will be a separate video, but in terms of the business model, I just wanted to make these real to you and show you the difference. And if you're thinking it's impossible to support myself with my writing, yeah, it might be if you do a broken business model like the traditional print novel path. But the subscription model is much more doable. In any of these business models, you're going to have to learn some marketing. You'll get more help with that in the traditional, but whether you're self-published or being a subscriber, you're still going to have to get people's attention. And as I really emphasized in the new indie model with subscriptions, it is easier to keep people's attention than it is to get their attention. And so there are a lot of reasons why this actually, fewer sales, you just have to keep their attention. It's a much better business model for people who are not good at marketing. However, there is a learning curve. So how am I going to get to a full-time income? Easy, it's this, just do that. Start a group with a $7 monthly subscription, get almost $80 per person, and get 1,284 people. So is this realistic for 2024? In no way, shape, or form for someone who has not already mastered this business model and marketing. Someone absolutely could do this, who is like an expert, who is like an established writer, good at marketing, has used platforms before. As a business coach who does not specialize in marketing, I have some advantages in terms of I can think clearly through business models and prioritize and execute, but I'm going to have a lot to learn about marketing and about how these platforms work. So I'm not expecting to get there in a year. This would be more like my 2025 goal. My 2024 goal, I would be much more modest because I typically find that growth is not just straight linear. It's really hard to get your first subscribers, but probably if you've got your first 100 subscribers, you can probably get your first, you can get your 1,000 the next year. I saw this a little bit with Jed Hearn's growth, where he had 4,000 subscribers at the end of 2022, and then looking at the end of 2023, he had 40,000. He'd grown 10x and had been able to go full-time just based on like YouTube and whatnot. Of course, I imagine that was it certainly wasn't his very first year of writing. I don't know how long he took to build up his YouTube platform to 4,000 subscribers. He's been posting for a while. So like even just assuming that, and that's not paid subscribers, right? And so I think getting to 1,200 paid subscribers in 2 years is pretty ambitious. Even getting to like a tenth of that, 100 subscribers in the first year, like is probably the same amount of effort to go from 0 to 128 as it would be to go from 128 to 1,284. So that's my goal. Doesn't it seem so simple? Simple, but not easy. If you have seen my case study video, you might have one big question remaining. This is great. This new indie subscription method is really simple but not easy, but very simple. This stands in high contrast to the case study that I put in that video for the author who was actually making the most money, who had like multiple income streams. And so why am I not doing that? Why am I not crafting a business plan where I'm getting monetized on YouTube, I have affiliate links, I have my paid subscription, I have books and merch and blah, blah, blah. Well, the simple reason is just way too much to focus on. Generally speaking, and this is where it's kind of nice to have a business background, I see how if you were organically growing your brand, you would organically get into all of these different income streams and grow them. And try and figure out how to manage that, how that can happen. And that's not bad. I'm not denigrating that in any way. But if you can construct your business and you want to create a quality business, it's so much easier to nail one business than to have the same level of success split across 4 different businesses, right? That's just more complexity. And so that's why I picked what was one of the most lucrative income streams in the survey, right? The subscription platform, and doubled down on that, focused on that so that I can make sure I really deliver. And what I want to do, what is my goal for this like $7 subscription, is that I have one of the best value, and this sounds like cheesy or whatnot, that sounds terrible, like it does sound businessy, and I'm already sorry I said that, not best value per subscription or per price. I want the best experience, the funnest stories, the best community, the most excitement and engagement for your $7 on the subscription platform. So I'm going to be looking into how to make that experience amazing. That is going to be my full-time income, and it's going to be easier than if I was just treating this as like a partial income while I try and do something else. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop telling stories. I want this to be a medium through which I tell stories, but I'm going to get really creative in how I tell stories. I'm going to continue on my print projects, but I might do some video teasers or demos or trailers or things like that. I might do like interactive fiction and whatnot, like do something a little gamified. I might try different things to really earn that $7 subscription. So, to put one of your fears at rest, dear watcher, this subscription platform is not going to have anything to do, at least immediately, with Ubiquitous Tavern. I'm going to continue to show you the behind-the-scenes business of making a living as an author, and what I'm going to be documenting is the creation of this, but you're not ever going to have to sign up to my subscription platform, whatever it is, when I create it, unless you happen to like my fiction. I'm gonna save that only for like kind of dark fantasy with dark humor, the type of stuff that I like to write, probably some RPG nerd stuff if it flies well with people, multimedia stuff, etc. But I will be giving you the behind-the-scenes look at the business here for free in continuity. That is not changing. And yes, that does mean I have to split my focus a teeny tiny little bit, but I'm here for you. I am all about helping you as an author make a living from your writing, and documenting my journey while I do it seems like the best way to do that. So how do you feel about these business models? Let me know in a comment down below. Are you a writer because you love novels and you're still sticking with the traditional or self-published route, even if it will take a long time or might not be as lucrative? Or are you excited by the possibility of using the new indie business model to make money more reliably and faster, but it requires a little bit more marketing and a little bit more flexibility in the medium that you tell your stories? Let me know down below where you're leaning and what your plans are for making money and achieving self-sufficiency in 2024 or soon thereafter. And if you're wondering how I arrived at the new indie model and or curious about other routes you might take as an indie author, you could check out my video on the 2000 full-time indie author survey on how they actually make their money. It's very enlightening. You can also check out my 3-author case study where I take a look at 3 very awesome transparent authors who share their income and compare that to what I learned from the survey. So check out those videos and I'll see you next time on the Ubiquitous Tavern.